We're live? Excellent.
It was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in. It's a long 12 hours, the power's out again. I pray for inner strength and that we don't lose no lives. Just another day in the first responders' eyes. Half a cup of coffee's gone, the first run comes in. A car slid off the road, there's a family trapped within. My heart beats like a hammer, I can barely catch my breath. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.
All right, welcome to the award-winning Mad Radio Show here in the Fishbowl on this Making a Difference Wednesday. Today's show is all about a path to healing. I want to welcome my co-host Sam. How are you?
Hello. How am I? I'm exhausted. Today has been a day, as you know, for a lot of people that you and I have both spoken to and checked in with.
Yeah. Well, we are broadcasting you live from Fishbowl Radio Network studios here in Globe Life Park, which is the home of the entertainment district here in Arlington, Texas. And, once again, we have a great show. And you look a little stressed out there, Sam.
You know, I think it hit me this afternoon when somebody posted. It goes back to 9/11. The feeling you had when you realized when the second plane hit the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like, wow, I didn't think about today like that. But I think for a lot of people, no matter what aisle, side of the aisle you're on, it's a really confusing time. And what happens, when we don't have control or the feeling of control? Stress, surprise.
Yeah. And a lot of people got stressed out last night.
Yes.
We were talking on the 99, and we were talking with Mike before, and he was reading about 55% of the nation was extremely stressed. Mm-hmm. And it brought me back to your Monday
Solve Your Stress mini-series?
Solve Your Stress mini-series. When we talked about laughter and we talked about the chemicals that just a laugh or a chuckle, releases into your body to make you heal a little better.
Yeah.
And it doesn't allow you to be brought down.
Well, yeah, you can't dwell on the negative if you've got these positive endorphins and all these feel-good hormones going on in your body, and laughter is truly important. And last night, we had the greatest distraction with my son who plays middle school football, and I just want to give a huge shout out and kudos to the Williams Middle School in Rockwall, Texas. Coaches, way to pull it out. Players, OMG. I mean, parents were, they say
right.
that parents should maintain decorum. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, not you, Sam.
No, everybody's respectful, but I mean, we were into it. These kids, and shout out to Utley too for bringing it. These kids brought their game, and it was back and forth, and Williams pulled it out with 4 minutes left. And so, it was
Exciting.
fantastic. Yeah.
Exciting. Now, with that, I mean, on both sides of that, with both families, the adrenaline rush, the excitement, the release of the endorphins, the dopamine into your body, this is what we're talking about. These are things, when we talk about a path to healing, and you got to check out Sam's mini-series from last week, which she really touches a lot on this, is if we sit and we watch TV all day long, and we watch the news, and and social media, and we inundate ourselves with all this negativity, this will spark we'll go down that rabbit hole that we don't want to go down. You know, we've discussed this prior, that, you know, family members and relationships, and, you know, people are unknowledgeable of post-traumatic stress, how certain words can trigger us into a bad place, and it could put us into a dark hole.
I'm laughing because the news and the media know all these words.
That's right. And
right.
You know, and I was thinking, and and you were at a football game last night. I was watching the news, and my anger issues and my post-traumatic stress, and it was exhausting. It got to the point where it was physically draining and exhausting, trying to hold down and trying to stay composed. And I felt that if I wasn't on this show with you, and I didn't listen to some of your mini-series, and we didn't do these workshops, if I was one of those guys who was in a home by myself,
or just got off a tough shift,
you know, a lot of things could have went bad real fast, because I felt myself, and I felt my anger growing, and I even turned around to Tara and I said, you know what, I'm going in the living room. I can't. I just can't do it no more. And
so what do we tend to do when it gets to that point and we feel overwhelmed? We reach for the first thing that's gonna kind of numb us, take away the pain. You and I have both been there, you know.
Yeah.
It's a shape of whatever bottle, you know. You had yours, I had mine.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's what we do. I mean, eating disorders, same thing. You reach for
or a bottle of pills, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And it really is. I find it humorous, and not, but more humorous that, you know, we need to actually like pay for studies that say 62% of people are suffering more stress this year than others. Well, like, duh. Like, with like money
right.
paid to garner those results. When I just think about where money could actually go to heal people that really need it.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of people that are financially strapped because of what they've been through this year, and it's very difficult for them to navigate. So it's just, you know, that's kind of
but
like
you hit it on the head with a guy just coming off a shift. Think about this. You know, you work in a busy area, be it firefighter, dispatch, whatever it is, you know, law enforcement, and you just came off a double homicide, or you just came off, you know, doing CPR on a 2-year-old, or a bad car accident, or a fire, and then you're sitting down and you're watching the crybaby bullshit that's on TV about this election, and what are you thinking? Going, Jesus Christ, you want to know reality?
Perspective.
You want to put something in perspective? I just was trying to breathe life into a 2-year-old. You know, that's perspective.
Right.
I had to go do a death notification. That's perspective. You know, and 55% of America was stressed over friggin' TV. See, getting there.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, because, you know, not to make light of or make stress less for folks that have not been exposed to trauma. You know, like everybody sitting in this room, like a specific traumatic event or a series of it. It's that everybody has some increase in stress that's affecting them at different levels. So I'm talking outside the first responder realm. People are writing into me. People are reading my blog. It's like, this is crazy. And I'm like, you're right. It is crazy. That's the word that they're using. Let's own that word. Now, what can we do? What can you do to help yourself maintain and grab on? There's a legal term called locus of control. I like to use that.
Oh, I like that.
To bring yourself into a feeling where you have control over the situation. And what do we have control over? We have control over our angry outbursts.
Right.
We have control over picking up another bottle or,
Right.
fourth.
Right, yeah.
Can, whatever. We have control over how we treat other people. Because let's face it, treatment of each other, we've talked about this for months now. Where has the humanness go?
Right.
You decide, you make a conscious choice to act like a shithead.
Right.
You do. And we don't have to behave like that. Everybody is going through their own stuff. Let's not compare. We need to put it in perspective, and we need strategies and tools and tactics to let people know that, hey, you can take control of this. And I think this is a great segue. To introduce our guest today, John.
This is definitely a path to healing, and I want to introduce our guest, Charles Clark of the Blue Voice, retired law enforcement.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, Charles?
Great, man. How you doing?
Britt, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're part of the show. Tell us a little about your background as a law enforcement officer.
Well, I spent 15 years in law enforcement, total of 26 in law enforcement security combined. Started up in the North Texas area. Worked for small towns, but, the small towns, you tend to have to do a lot.
Overloaded.
More than just your average patrol officer. So that's where a lot of my problems began at, with some of the things I saw. Ended up coming to the Tarrant County area. Eventually became a chief for a small lake community in North Tarrant County. Did that.
You just speak, just speak up just a little bit.
Worked a narcotics stint for about a year, and ended up down in South Texas, 2007. Was there about 7 months and ended up destroying my right knee on a domestic foot pursuit. Spent 2 years of surgeries and physical therapy. Couldn't reach maximum medical improvement, and it was game over for me. Wasn't ready, but had no choice.
Now, the small department in Texas, were you taken care of? Did they just go up? You're done.
No, I had to
Fight?
live on workers' comp for the 2 years I was going through that, and the city didn't even match the difference. So I got 70% of my pay through that whole time, and then once they determine there's no way to reach maximum medical improvement, then you're just done, because there's no detective spot to go to or any other position to transition to. Behind a desk, you're just
right.
I probably could have stayed on workers' comp, for several years and just cash checks, but it wouldn't have been fair to the guys who were working. When I was off, they were working more than they should because they couldn't fill the spot, because technically I was still there. So it was a choice that I made for myself, and just to kind of be fair to the other guys, and bugged out.
Oh, how about that integrity? Yeah.
Yeah. But you
can I just say something?
Yeah.
So for people, because they see us all sitting down, so Charles is like a skyscraper. What are you, 6'7"? Okay, so this 6'6". I was off by an inch. This mild mannered, very soft-spoken man is a towering teddy bear. Is it okay if I he gives great hugs. What are you laughing at, Borna? But yeah, so if you can imagine, you were in uniform, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. This 6'6" police officer. Yeah, but now you hear him speak, and to connect that for people who are like, what? Are you size like 15 shoe?
14.
See? Well, I'm like, I'm on.
You're on it.
Like,
You're on it. What are you doing looking at his feet?
Are you kidding me? The first time that we met at David Jordan's place, they have small tables in the sandwich shop, and I'm watching him. Try and sit down, and I was like, wow, okay, that's a big man.
What got me was what you said was game over. You weren't ready to leave.
Yeah.
And, so many officers out there, myself included, after I got hurt on the job, I was not ready to leave. I did about a year on light duty, and then there was no more light duty. And that puts another burden on law enforcement that aren't ready to leave the job. And they want to still contribute. They still want to help the community. They still want to make a difference. But you know what? We're kicked to the curb. And then
useless.
What?
You feel like you've lost your purpose.
Right, because once again, as law enforcement, which it shouldn't be, but it becomes our identity
Yes.
at some point in our career. It does become our identity, and it's a meaningful job because, like I said, law enforcement, we don't choose law enforcement. Law enforcement chooses us, you know?
Absolutely.
So when you finally, when they turn around and you said, well, you know, you're done, you know, it takes a couple days to process going, shit, I'm not a cop anymore. I'm not a police officer. I'm not. How did that affect you?
My problems with PTS started after the surgeries and spending the downtime, all of a sudden, you know, being not involved in it and not being a part of it anymore. Laying up, I guess, because I went through 2 different surgeries and a lot of physical therapy. I think laying up allowed that to kind of start its process of setting in, because all you have is, at that point, is you have memories and recollections, and some of those memories aren't always good ones, and the things you thought you forgot or that you put in the back of your head from some of the things you've seen all come rushing back. Things you hadn't thought of or remembered in a long time. And that's when it started for me, was around, I think, when I say 2010. And then I spent the next couple of years not really knowing what was going on. I took a very bad path, started drinking a lot. Not gonna lie, I was sticking my gun in my mouth 3 nights a week. I was a single parent raising my 2 kids that I got in custody of when they were 3. That's probably the only reason I didn't pull that trigger, is because every time I got to that point, I thought about my kids and how, you know, I couldn't abandon them like their mother
Right.
did. So that was probably the only thing that kept me from doing it. Thank God.
Yeah.
And eventually, you know, it came crashing down. I ended up getting in an incident with the local police department that was sent to do a welfare check on me. I'd sent a text message to another LEO friend. And because of the stigma of PTS and the lack of training in law enforcement on how to deal with people with PTS, they took it a little bit further than just a welfare check. They sent numerous officers, including a tactical unit. Long story short, I'm not going to go all into it. I'm not going to name the agency, but they ended up finding me at a bar down the street, called me out, and took me down very hard, even though I told them I'd cooperate and I wasn't armed. They just thought because I had PTSD that I guess it was going to turn into the OK Corral or something. I was going to pull a gun and start shooting. And I told them I didn't even have a gun in my vehicle. But you know, I could hear it in their voice.
They were nervous.
Just waiting for it. So they pounced me in the parking lot and took me down very hard and ended up breaking my wrist.
Now you take down it takes a lot to take somebody who's 6'6"
And
down
break his wrist.
and break his wrist. So you know that you know, thinking about that, the force it must take to put you down.
Well, when you're not resisting,
Right.
and you're intoxicated. I have to admit, I was heavily intoxicated. I've been drinking all day.
Right.
But when you don't resist them, it's pretty easy to take somebody my size down because they just boom, you know.
But I'm sure they like you said they
But
have.
they used more than one. You know, it was yeah. And they, like I said, they took me down very hard and hard enough to break my wrist and, like I said, tear my rotator. And, but you know, as a good thing though, they ended up taking me to Tarrant County, and I got to get some, you know, to see a mental health specialist, and that's kind of what started the ball rolling. You know, to finding out what exactly my problem was and what I needed, and in a way.
At this point, did you know what post-traumatic stress was? Did you know that you were?
I knew what it was. I'd actually first kind of experienced it back in 2001. I was involved in a pursuit that ended up in a very nasty fatality, motorcycle chase. And that was the first time something had really affected me. I've worked tons and tons of accidents and fatalities, but this was the first time that it really kind of bothered me. But I thought I'd work through it. It's, again, one of those things that I just put in the back of my head, you know, at the time, like we all do, and, you know, laugh about it now, cry about it later type deal. And but really, it never really went anywhere. But I didn't really, at this point, didn't know it was PTSD because I'd consumed myself with drinking and
Masked it.
yeah, and partying and you know, pills.
Yep.
And just and doing other ways, taking other extreme measures.
Risks.
You know, I got into sport bikes. I ended up getting in 2 near fatal accidents. The first one, I don't know how I survived. It's crazy. But just doing stupid shit, you know, kind of hoping, well, you know, if I don't pull the trigger on myself, maybe I'll do something that'll, an accident will happen.
Self-destructive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and believe me, I tried. And with God's will and luck, my body's banged
yeah.
up, but I'm still here.
He was looking out for your 2 kids.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
isn't it interesting? Because we hear a lot about this with law enforcement and veterans suffering. They don't have a clinical diagnosis. They've got the risky behavior, and they don't tend to associate, in your case, the sport bikes, doing risky things, taking extra risks even at work.
Right.
And the active suicide attempts. Like, there's a disconnect between that, and it's like, well, at least I'm not trying to kill myself. Really?
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, time out here. Let's back the truck up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you brought up another good point where you didn't know, and I'm gonna go with myself as well. I was not diagnosed for 10 years. I was on a self-destructive path for 10 years, and because I never knew about things that may hit me. When we talk about leaving the job and losing our identity and losing what we love to do, we're never sat down. I was given my walking papers, just said, hey, listen, you're medically discharged. I was in a wire room. I was in a wiretap room doing a mob. And all of a sudden I get the phone call from the medical guy, hey, you're done. I said, what do you mean? You can go home. We've cleared you. You're not a cop anymore. So I'm like, okay, I'm just grabbing my crap and going. And my team is like, what's up? I'm like, oh, I got
Yeah, where
medically
are you
discharged. I
going?
walked down the stairs out of the apartment, got my car and went home. And I got home and I'm like, is that it?
Yeah,
I'm done. Like movie over? And,
Movie over without closure.
right. And,
Yeah.
you bring up a great point where we're not doing exit interviews with our officers that are injured. We're not addressing what an officer may be feeling in the months to come. We're not preparing him to say, hey, listen, you're not a law enforcement officer no more. You may go through these stages. Be prepared. You, Charles, just like me, were unprepared, so we didn't know how to react to them. We didn't know how to feel. So what do? We started drinking. We started anger, breaking things. We because we're lost.
Right.
I
wanted to ask you, you said a good thing that came out of what happened was that you finally did get into some treatment. So was that your first kind of like aha moment that now what I've been going through has a name?
Yeah, and I was familiar with it. I just really didn't see. I needed to reach that moment where I was willing to admit that was the real problem, and that I needed to get help for it and talk to somebody, and that was it. But back to what you were saying about in the exit interviews and stuff like that. On the flip side, I firmly believe that they need to start in the police academy. They need to educate on post-traumatic stress in the police academy,
Yep.
so
Yep,
people understand,
absolutely.
officers understand that if you reach this point and you start struggling with these things, you're not the only one. This could happen. The things you're going to see, the things you're going to do. The human brain isn't, made to continually take on all that trauma. So, and express to new recruits that mental health is just as important as physical health. They're very big on physical health in the police academies, but they need to start being more proactive on mental health and preparing officers for once they get down the road and understanding that, they can reach out and get help. And on the other side, they need to develop a program for the Bill Blackwood Institute has a police chief development program in Texas. Every chief has to attend once he becomes a chief. They need to include something in that educates chiefs on the importance of recognizing post-traumatic stress, developing programs to where officers can come to their administrators and seek help without the fear of losing their job.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
and that all goes back down to smashing the stigma. And we, me and Sam have visited a couple of police departments, big and small. And, when you talk about a small department, they are more of the sweep it under the rug, rub some dirt on it, because they don't, and they don't have the funding to send for training. And when you have if you have a staff of 10, you got 5 out on patrol, 5 off duty. How are you getting those guys in to even get the proper training that is needed? And then, you talk about, the Chiefs program. We went into a station the other day, and, they got a program in place, but they got, taglines right on the door. It says mental health office.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's their cover for having a program in place.
Right. And, a lot of smoke and mirrors. A lot of smoke and mirrors. A lot of smoke and mirrors. So, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and another thing that I'm trying to get the focus on is law enforcement officers themselves need to be trained on how to deal with people with post-traumatic stress. The way I got handled was completely wrong. It should not have been done. There was no need to pound on me like that and to take me down that hard. They could have, walked up and talked to me, even if it took just 3 or 4 of them, to encircle me and make sure I have no weapons. And, they could see my hands at all times.
Right.
My buddy that's the cop that called them, he actually showed up on the scene. He's like, "Whoa, what are y'all doing? This is not necessary. He's not going to hurt y'all, man. He's an ex-cop.
Right.
He's not going to do anything.
Right.
Just let me walk in and tell him to come out and talk to you." And they threatened to arrest him if he didn't leave.
For those that don't know what a welfare check is, a welfare check is just, when somebody can't get in touch with somebody or they're not feeling secure, they send usually 2 patrol officers over to the house to knock on the door just to make sure you're okay. If you're not home, they usually don't go searching for you. They usually don't, go looking around. But in this case, because they said, wow, it's a guy with PTSD, and they took it to another level and bringing out almost a SWAT team.
They put out a bolo on me. I got text messages when I turned my phone on next morning from cops, friend of mine's from all over Tarrant County, going, "Dude, what the hell? We just got a bolo on your truck."
Wow. Wow. Yeah, well, that's you just talked about the education piece, and that the word betrayal comes to mind, because we in law enforcement, we got your 6. It's a call it a tagline, call it a phrase that you hear out there, but it is absolutely true. You rely on your partners, others in your department, to always have your back.
Right.
And when you're having a difficult time, with your mental wellness, my question is, why is that going to change? It clearly changed in your situation, which is horrible. Why do we have that, call it mind shift, into, well, if it's a mental issue, mental health issue, whether it's a police officer or not, everybody, that hypervigilance, everybody goes up, PTS, we're hearing the words. It's your brother.
Right, and this is the second.
It's your brother. Would you want your mom or your dad or your kid to be treated like? No.
Right.
So what is the betrayal aspect, and why does that even come into the, and brotherhood includes us sisters in blue. Why? And that is a big piece of education that needs to get out there. They already feel like they have no identity. You already had that, okay? John, you had that. Now you're going to go and do
right.
that.
And lack of training.
It's a lack of training, but you think about this. This is the second time we've heard this from him and one other person who actually ended up shooting himself, okay, because of the tactics that the police department has taken. Or 3. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're a small circles here, and we've heard the same exact story 3 times, right? There are over 1 million police officers in this country. This has got to be going on in other departments.
Right. We are part of the thin blue line. It doesn't stop once we're off the job.
Right.
Right? Right. And what you do, and if you guys go on to the Blue Voice on Facebook, you'll see what Charles does in the education to really bring down that stigma and mental health. It's like, these are the things that when you leave the job as a law enforcement officer, you want to know that you're still part of that thin blue. How do you feel? How can you feel that you're part of that if you're treated
Right.
Like, with kid gloves, and no, can't, PTS. I mean, I even had, and I'm not trying to compare in any way, this weird thing when we adopted Hayden, and I was on the job, and I had the 3 months off
Maternity?
by law, yeah.
Right.
And all of a sudden the phone calls stopped. And I was like, what is going on? Why is nobody returning my call? What occurred? And because I couldn't get an answer to why did you all stop calling till I actually got back on the job. And I asked them why, and we're like, oh, well, the higher up said don't call you because, technically that would be if we asked you to do work, you're on the job. I was like, so you can't call and ask about my welfare as a new mom?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Right.
So this is coming from upper management. So there are things in place just like that stupidity.
Yeah.
And, let's call it what it is. That's just downright dumb. What happened to Charles, downright dumb.
Right, but, once again, out of sight, out of mind. You look at Chief Ferris, I think that's his name. He's in San Antonio. He was in a bad car accident. He had lost his leg. He was the chief. He is sitting home for months. No phone calls. Nobody from his department calling to check on his well-being. No, you feel like
Yeah, so how do you heal?
I don't get that. See that?
Right.
Maybe I'm old school. Maybe it's the way I was brought into this career.
Do you jump
but
off the line? No.
I'll email and pick up the phone, and I hear stories all the time of officers across the country that are injured, and the families that reach out of fallen officers. But I hear about a brother officer or sister officer that gets hurt. I don't even know them. It breaks my heart.
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've cried over officers I don't even know. And how many times I've emailed them and picked up the phone and called them and said, hey, you don't know me, but, I'm Charles with the Blue Voice. I heard what happened to you. If there's anything we can do to help you, if you just need to talk. That's what it's supposed to be.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be blue family. That blue line is supposed to be the strongest bond that holds us all together. And maybe I'm old school, and maybe it's,
No, you
That's
you
the way
have
it should
humanity. You
Because like I said, the oath I signed didn't have an expiration date.
exactly.
Yes,
100%,
exactly.
and I like that.
Yeah, the heart for service that we talk about, that never leaves.
Yeah. Right.
We just don't carry a badge anymore. We're in Texas.
Right.
We have the gun part covered. But yeah, we don't have the badge to go with it.
Right. But if something goes down, you're going to identify yourself as a police
course.
officer. You're not going to identify yourself as, hey, I'm medically discharged from the police department.
And that's the funny thing. We were talking about tactically clearing rooms and everything with firearms training, and it really getting, with Texas being the castle doctrine, because I moved here from the East Coast where everything is ass backward. And, East Coast. It's true.
It's true.
And I'm putting myself through scenarios, and it's like, oh my gosh, my default would be coming out, with my gun, oh, police, let me see your hands. And
Right.
it's like, no, I can't say that.
Yeah, but it would just.
It's like you even have to train yourself out of that. So.
But what would you say?
Well,
Hi, I'm retired Secret Service.
no, in Texas you don't have to say anything. So it's like lead poisoning. So sorry for you.
Right.
911. Could you please come over? And but we won't. For liability reasons, we won't get into that. Anyway,
but let's get into the Blue Voice.
so for the Blue
Sharon is,
Voice, you just said something very impactful that you see these stories, you don't even know the families, the officer, you're reaching out. Talk about how the Blue Voice, your voice, and the people that are involved in your organization, how you keep everybody going on that blue line.
Pretty much what we do is, like I said, one thing about the Blue Voice is we don't sell anything. We don't take donations or ask for donations or money, but we will put other people's fundraisers out there once they've been vetted, and we know they're legit. I don't even pay for advertising, but I got 80,000 followers. It's just by word of mouth and by support, because people know I'm not trying to get rich off this. I'm not trying to make money off of it. This is nothing but support and love for my Blue family. That's all it is. And believe me, I get emails all the time, now people wanting to sponsor ads or have me post different things and offer to pay me per post or pay me a percentage per, and at my side they get the same response. I'm not doing this to make money. That's not why I do it. I don't want your money. I don't want your advertisements. I'm just going to keep doing it the way I am because that's what it's for. And that's what makes me different than some of the other, 50 million blue line Facebook pages and Instagrams out there.
Right.
So I ain't selling shit.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm support, and then it also gives me the ability for people to reach out. Like I tell officers, I'm always available. If you don't want to, if you're worried about talking to somebody, I'm no professional, but I understand. I've survived this PTS shit for 10 years. If you want to bend an ear, call me. I'll sit on the phone with you all night. And believe
Sometimes
me,
that's the best therapy.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's
Yeah.
the
and
best therapy.
I've been on the
Having
phone
that
for
outlet.
hours. Officers from other states have randomly reached out and just to do that, and try to help promote fundraisers for the family of fallen officers. Aaron Slater, who owns Relentless Defender, is a good friend of mine. This guy is. I'll always promote his fundraisers because he's donated over $1 million, I think, in the last year to fallen officers and injured officers and their families. Great guy. So I always push his fundraisers and his stuff because I know he's legit and he's 100% about helping the same way I am. But it's all about helping and being there and promoting, the awareness and bringing attention to the climbing suicide rate among police officers and first responders. And trying to reduce that stigma and to make, administrators and cities understand that, there has to be training, there has to be programs, because if you don't develop programs and bring in training, it's going to get worse. And then also on the flip side, trying to promote departments and chiefs to train their officers to send them to some kind of mental health school where they understand PTS, understand that, most people with PTS aren't raging lunatics that are going to open fire on you or try to hurt
Right.
you.
Right.
98% of them are going to break down and cry on you.
They're hurting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to hurt you. And they need to understand that, because from what they've seen in the movies and they've heard in the media, because of course the media doesn't ever like to tell the truth. They like to tell what sells.
Really?
Shocker, right?
Right.
But-
Newsflash.
Spoiler alert.
Breaking news.
Yeah, that's what they go off of, and then that's where you get incidents like mine, and like the incident where the officer shot himself because of the way an agency handled it improperly. It's got to change, and this is my way of hopefully, if I can make just a little bit of a change or a little bit of a difference, or if I can keep one officer from sticking his gun in his mouth and pulling the trigger, then I love it. I'm happy.
Well, see, and you turned around and you said you were part of a small lakeside department. How many members?
Oh, when I was chief,
Yeah.
I think I had 5 full-time and maybe 6 or 7
That's
reserves.
small.
That's a
Yeah.
small
Small.
department.
Yeah.
So and there are many of those around the nation. So as a chief, how would you handle that? I mean back then probably didn't have what we have now, but your budgets aren't like New York City or Chicago or Detroit or Philadelphia.
Or even Tarrant County.
Or Tarrant County.
Yeah.
You don't have those $1 million budgets. You probably have just enough to put gas in the car and make sure the guy has enough rounds of
Rounds,
ammunition.
yeah. Everybody
because-
count your ammo today.
Right, because you're dealing
exactly.
with a small lakeside community, and it's a small department. So, training. Oh my God, that must have been how hard was it to even get training?
There's absolutely almost zero budget for it. My budget was horrible. It's because the city I lived in had the tax income was so low because of the lack of business. It was all residential.
Right.
It was just horrible. But I think for small chiefs, for small towns, the chiefs need to understand that there are grants out there. There's grant money out there that especially for small departments.
I'm going to stop you right there on that. Yes, there is grant money, okay? But can you write a grant?
No, and that's where you, and that's the other problem you run
Most
into.
people,
We got to connect the dots to get grant writers to these smaller
right, and a grant writer
departments.
costs money.
Right.
You know?
Hey, if anybody's listening that knows grant writers or has access to them that could help with some of these smaller departments, please leave a comment
Yeah.
or reach out to me or John
Because-
or Charles at the Blue Voice.
Because there is a lot of money for departments,
Yeah.
but they just can't access it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the other problem you run into.
Yep.
So I mean, you're as a chief of a small department, you know, yes, you want to bring in the mental health aspect to get you guys, treated or give them knowledge, but you also say, well, I got $1,000 to go to tactical training, or $1,000 to go to mental health. I'm going to tactical training because I don't want my officers to get killed, and I want to bring the equipment, right? So maybe next year we'll do this, or maybe next year we'll do
Right,
this.
so that has been for time immemorial, right? Every department has thought that way, that everything goes to the survivability factor, right? Let's get everybody trained, let's do the tactical stuff. What's included in your survivability factor when you have officers completing suicide at alarming rates? And even though you have departments, big cities have these big budgets, those are the departments that need it the most because they're seeing the highest rates.
Right.
And so it almost needs to be like a trickle-down effect where, I don't know, this is Sam's brain going, just throwing stuff out there. You have all these departments surrounded by, let's say, one big department or two larger departments. How cool would it be to kind of pool everything together so that the smaller departments could look to the bigger departments and not have that, well, hey, we got to take care of our own. Thin blue line.
But see,
Blue line,
you just brought up
everybody,
another good point.
everybody.
You just
And
brought
that's
up
what
another
we're
good
doing.
point. That would be great to grab everybody together, right? But how hard is it to even get two departments to even talk to each other and communicate on other things?
I know. This is where the extension of that brotherhood, the sisterhood, because at the end of the day, we all identify the same, right? We're all
Right.
part of that. And it doesn't stop once you're off the job, and it doesn't stop just because you're a part of a different department.
Right.
There, especially now, with everything that is bombarding our officers out there. I mean, we already know that their mental wellness it's like a jackhammer every day.
Right.
And bring in a brother or sister that falls in your own department, that's even worse. And we have to stop this. We don't have money. We don't have a budget for training. These are the kind of things that need to be figured out. Because one of the things that bugged the living crap out of me was any department that I went to or worked for that said, well, that's not the way
We do it.
Well, that's not the way we do it. That's not the way we've always done it. So it's this precedent that was set in 1940.
Yeah.
And we're in 2020 that has carried through this whole
Tradition.
thing. Even like in first year law school, where if you're called on, you got to stand up and you take your being berated by the professor. That's a load of horse crap because you're
Right.
not preparing somebody to be very confident going into it. To speak in front of a judge.
Right.
If you're constantly berated, right? What's that going to
Right.
do?
It's going to belittle you. It's going to make you insecure.
Shy away, insecure,
Yeah.
right? So we need to stop that crap, and we need to look at what we're dealing with present day, and it's okay to admit that you don't have the answer. But it's not okay to sit there and allow your department, and I'm talking to chiefs, to allow, because you're the leader, to suffer needlessly. They need to know your department. You want 100% functioning, awesome, incredible officers that do your job, that frankly make you look good as a chief, right? What chief doesn't want that?
But
If you're not including mental wellness as part of your training, it's impossible in this day and age to achieve that. And yes, I use the word impossible, and you know I never say that word. But it in 2020 and beyond, it is impossible to attain that as a chief if you do not look at the mental wellness of your troops.
Correct. I mean,
and that's where Charles connects the dots really well.
Right, and small town departments like yourself, you know, New York, some chiefs didn't even know they were officers, right? You, with 6 officers or 10 officers, you knew them. Mm-hmm. You know, there was individual
and their families,
and their families. So you knew if your officer was having a hard time at home. You knew if he, you know, it's more personalized on that aspect. And once again,
and being a small town, I also got a chance to see things that I knew could affect my officers. Like I had a young officer that was on patrol one morning, driving the neighborhood. A kid ran out in front of a squad car and he hit the kid. This officer was in his early 20s. He was new, fresh into it, and I knew that this had the potential to affect him. I mean, he just hit a kid.
Yep.
You know, and so, but being there and being in a small town and actually knowing each call that happens and what each officer experiences and sees, it afforded me the opportunity to get a head start on a potential issue that they might, and be there for them and explain to them, that, hey, you know, you might feel this, you know, you might start having nightmares, and you're going to start replaying this in your head over and over, and you can't figure out why.
You know, what if yourself?
Yeah, and you know, and then tell them that, you know, hey, you know, my phone's always on. You know, you start having these issues, call me. We'll work it out. We'll talk through it, and, you know, and get you whatever the help you need. And so that was a benefit of being a small town chief.
Yeah.
Of that. But Sharonda had mentioned about, they do need to bring it into the academy.
Right.
They need to start at the academy so officers at the beginning understand the potential. And like you said, so it's not such a shock to them if they do experience it.
Yeah, we me and Sam were talking, and when we go over this, not only bring in into the academy for the young recruits, you need a day to bring the family in, the spouses, the moms, the dads,
Agree.
And say, you know what, this is what your son, your daughter may experience throughout the life of his career. You cannot be silent. You cannot, there are trigger words, there are non-trigger words, and as weight as, if you see PTSI starting to form in your son or daughter, these are the steps you need to take.
Changes in behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
These are the steps you need to take. You can't blow them off, because what I've seen and what I've read about is a lot of the suicides could have been prevented. And if you always see it, it was domestic. They were having a fight with their girlfriend at 2 o'clock in the morning. They were drinking in a bar, or you know what? That person probably wouldn't have committed suicide, wouldn't have taken their life, because they would have been able to deal with the stress of the argument. But it was the post-traumatic stress that pushed him over the edge, that gave him that opportunity to end his life. Because if he was mentally healthy from the job, he would have been able to take that domestic, you know, maybe work it out.
Work it out. Yeah.
You know, so we need to get spouses involved. We need to get family involved to recognize, and not just blow that under the table as well.
So we're here. We are again.
Again, wow.
How can people reach you?
You can message me on the Blue Voice, or you can the BlueVoiceSupport at gmail.com. Two best ways to get me right there. I'm always checking on messages, always checking the email. Anybody can reach out to me anytime. I'll answer any questions, help out any way I can, and take any advice I can get. You know,
that's.
Charles, if you can give the young officers from some of the departments, or even the bigger departments, any advice right now, what would you, if you were in front of them and they said, you know, Charles, I'm not feeling good, what would you say to them?
Reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. When you start struggling, talk to your brothers and sisters, talk to somebody. Mental health is every bit as important as physical health. You know, we train to fight. We train to, you know, by lifting weights, and, you know, some of us get into martial arts. But if you don't train the brain And if you don't work on that mental health, eventually it's going to catch up to you no matter how tough you think you are.
No.
Absolutely.
Charles, thank you so much,
Yes, sir.
man. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time coming down here. Sam, you
Yeah.
want to wrap it up?
Yeah, so hey, check us out on our YouTube page. Please go to Mad Radio Texas, hit the subscribe button. All of the replays from previous shows are uploaded there. And as always, you can support the show by visiting, well, you're on our Facebook page. If you're watching through Facebook, you can scroll up after the show, see all the books and everything that are available. And hey, if you want to support in the most unique way, get your Texas license to carry. Visit carryintexas.com. You'll get me. That's right, Sam. I am your instructor. I take you through the course. It is online, and if you want to shoot the proficiency with me, you can do that as well. And we'll have some big changes coming up
Yep.
into December, but we're going to
Hold off on those.
hold
yet.
off on
Yes.
those announcements. And to everybody out there on that thin blue line, holding it strong, we got your back. Always, we got your back. You need anything, please reach out. abadgeofhonor.com. We've got an upcoming workshop. Reach out to us for information on that. You are not alone, and it's okay not to be okay.
Until next week, today's not the day to give up.
Amen.
God bless.